So, ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, we now move on to the first session, and I'd like to invite both our speakers up on stage, Rohini Nilekani and Dr. Mihir Shah, if you could please come up as I introduce you. Our first session looks at our cities, our rivers, reimagining the relationship, and we are joined on stage now by Rohini and Dr. Shah.
So I'm going to kind of ask Mihir, we are going to talk about cities and rivers as our session says, but I thought that I would ask Mihir to dwell on his work in the Planning Commission, and which of course came out of the work he's been doing for years in Samaj Pragati Sahyog, so that we can talk about the basic principles of water management that he has helped to embed in central and state laws and policies. So Mihir, as we discussed, could you share with us the process by which you created such far-reaching new sort of policy and what it means for the future of water in this country?
Thank you, Rohini, and thank you very much for having me here in this very exciting event. I think the important thing that we need to understand is that when we speak of reforming policy or making a change happen, which actually impacts people positively on the ground, first thing is that we have to reform government system and government process. I think it would be too fanciful to imagine that solutions to our most important problems like water can happen without involving the government. I just wanted to say that in the beginning. So when Dr. Manmohan Singh, just out of the blue in 2009, called me, and I was in a remote tribal village in Madhya Pradesh, and he said, look, I want you to come and join the Planning Commission. And I said, sir, I am not looking for a job, as you know. And I consciously took a decision to stay away from the corridors of power. And he said, look, that's all very well. But for the last 20 years, you've done some work which we believe can make a positive impact on national programs and policies. And after giving due thought to it, I accepted very gratefully his invitation. And what I thought I would do is to briefly describe a very different process that I followed while drafting the water policies for the 12th five-year plan. See, what has happened is that when a plan is prepared, generally there are working groups. Each subject, such as water, you have about 8 to 10 working groups dealing with different aspects of water. Traditionally, every working group in the Planning Commission was headed by the secretary of the concerned ministry in the central government. Now, I decided that we have to make a change. While I said we must work with government, we must also recognize that all wisdom does not reside in government, and that there are many, many people who have done outstanding research and outstanding work on the ground on water, whose insights and whose understanding and experience must benefit the formulation of the 12th. So what I did was that every chair of every working group that I set up under water was headed by a person from outside government. And as you can imagine, a veritable storm was in the making, and there were letters flying from the secretaries to the Honorable Prime Minister that, look, this guy, who is he? Is coming from the outside and he doesn't understand government procedure, etc. And I must, say with due credit to Dr. Manmohan Singh that he completely backed. And he said, you go ahead quietly with what you are doing, and I will manage all this ruckus that's being created. So what I did was the chairs were the people from the outside, outstanding experts such as Tushar Shah, Sunita Narayan, people like that were the chairs of these groups. But the co-chair was the secretary in each case. So that, the idea is that we must learn how to influence policy. And the success of this process, which took about a year, which I cannot go into the details of,
yes.
The indicator of success was that at the end of the process, there was no one left happy. Everyone left the room feeling upset about the fact that their pet idea had not got the kind of traction that they would have wanted.
Okay.
And for me, that was a measure of success, because everyone had left their fundamentalisms outside the room. They had come to a common ground, which is what we need to forge on water. There were compromises made along the way, but I think everyone finally signed off on a document which, I would say represents a paradigm shift in the way we want to manage water in this country. And subsequently, this process is moving forward.
So I think from that I would take, if we were to reimagine the relationship of rivers and our urban settlements, this could be one sort of model where you create working groups and you bring elements of what I call the continuum of Samaj, Bazaar and Sarkar. You cannot solve complex societal issues without reducing the friction to collaborate between Samaj, Bazaar and Sarkar. And I think in some way Mihir's example shows us some way forward. But Mihir, so what were the 3 or 4 things that you made? I could see, because in our work we also collaborated with
Yes,
you as Arghyam.
absolutely.
And we saw some new, as she said, a paradigm shift. Can you tell us some of the 3 or 4 pillars of that shift in water management and governance?
The fundamental principle that lay behind the new thinking was that you cannot view an economy without regarding it as part of a larger ecosystem.
Yes.
It's true of water, it's true of all the natural resources that we are really blessed with and which we completely disregard. And we have this worship of the manna of higher rates of growth, but we don't realize that these rates of growth cannot be sustained unless we also take care of the larger ecosystem, the ecology that is sustaining this process of economic growth. And without doing that, the growth process itself will be deeply compromised.
Yes.
It will neither be inclusive nor will it be sustainable. And finally, you will run out of the absolutely precious resources that are sustaining this process. So in every element of the paradigm shift, you will find this principle resonates throughout what was being proposed. And I can actually try and connect it to the topic we are discussing today.
Okay.
For example, let's take the whole issue of, we saying our cities, our rivers. Now the fact is, there are 2 ways I can see how cities and rivers have a very important relation. The first is that you actually bring river water to quench the thirst of the city. By damming the river, what we are doing is we are trying to say that we'll solve the water problem of our cities, and more rivers have to be dammed. The extreme of this, of course, is this, I call it a grotesque plan for the interlinking of India's rivers. And I just want to take 2 minutes to bring out certain very important facts about this whole idea, which could be a complete disaster for the people living in the Indian subcontinent. And I'll explain the point about the economy having to be embedded within the ecosystem through this example. So what they are proposing is that there is an engineering, there's these cliches that Madhavan was talking about. So there are a lot of engineering cliches, and they're actually also myths. So one of the favorite engineering statements is that we must not allow the water in the river to flow wastefully into the sea. So the emphasis is on the word wasteful. That any water that is reaching the sea is actually water we have lost. We should have consumed this water before it wastefully reached the sea. So the idea is build more and more dams and get that water to provide the needs of the people wherever the civilization exists. The difficulty with this proposal, if it were to be carried out, and I'm glad that governments are struggling and not...
But let me just reinforce for the audience that it is, you remember your 3rd standard lesson on the hydrological cycle, right? It's really, it doesn't make any sense not to allow rivers to flow into your oceans. Many of our rivers today are not reaching the sea, and that's going to have serious consequences on the hydrological cycle and the monsoon patterns over time. So to say that you're wasting water when you let it go into the ocean is really ignoring very basic science that we learned in 3rd grade.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rohini, because everybody, I think, used to have this diagram. In our time, it was called geography.
Yeah.
Now I think it's called EVS.
EVS, yeah.
I'm as ancient as that. But the fact is, why is the monsoon cycle compromised? It's something very interesting. So, when the fresh water of the rivers reaches the sea, it creates a low salinity layer in the upper, water of the ocean. And this low salinity layer triggers the high temperatures and low pressure, which finally actually is the trigger for the monsoons. If we stop the fresh water from reaching the sea, we would have deeply compromised the monsoon cycle. Life and livelihoods in the subcontinent could be deeply threatened. So I think this is an example that in thinking of development, if we do not understand ecology, if we do not understand our rivers and how to sustain them, we could be making a very serious mistake. The second element of this river-city relationship is the rivers that flow through our city. And there what we are doing is, it's not because we want to stop them from reaching the sea, but because we want, we want this real estate.
Yeah.
And to make profits out of that, we are constantly encroaching on the drainage lines, which means the channels through which these rivers are flowing through the city are being encroached upon.
Yes.
So I'm just asking you, if you do not allow this water to flow in its natural course, it is bound to change course, and at the time of heavy rainfall and with climate change and these kinds of events of precipitation happening, extreme rainfall happening, the water has to find its way, is going to find its way into your homes. And that's where, the urban flooding issue becomes so serious.
Yes.
Because again, we have neglected the fact that a city must grow organically around the rivers with which it is blessed. And if we encroach upon the way the water moves in these rivers, we are going to actually exacerbate the problem of flooding in urban areas.
Right. But also, Mihir, Bangalore is particularly interesting because one is, of course, we bring water from the Kaveri at great expense and at great energy cost. From so far away, we actually pump it up. And all of us sitting here who are from Bangalore, we just take the Kaveri for granted. And the fact that the Kaveri is coming here, we are not thinking of who's deprived on the way of the Kaveri waters. But more than that, it is, where is all that water when we use it, we pollute it, we don't treat it, and then we send it off. And there are a lot of downstream impacts on that. So imagining how a river can come from far away and sustainably be used within a city is also something we have not really thought about at all.
Actually, what I would do is I'd request Rohini to speak about the extraordinary work she's doing within Bangalore and to illustrate this point with what is the state of our lakes and our rivers, what we have done, and hopefully what we can possibly do to correct that.
Yeah. No, so actually, even though Arghyam doesn't work particularly in Bangalore, we've been, A3 is another organization I support. I urge you to look at a3.org. They've been doing a lot of work on the Vrishabhavati and the Arkavati.
Yes.
Two rivers that were tributaries of the Kaveri flowing through our city, Vrishabhavati from the Bull Temple itself, and also the Dakshin Pinakani, not so far from here, originating in the Nandi Hills. Now, there are a lot of people trying to understand how can we revive these rivers, and Bangalore can actually drive back the Kaveri because we have enough rain, we have enough lakes, we had rivers. If we rejuvenate them, we really don't need to bring Kaveri water at that cost to feed this thirsty city. But the Vrishabhavati, what is it? It is nothing but a drain. The imagination of citizens with their rivers is destroyed. We have no relationship with the idea of a river anymore, and nobody remembers a healthy flowing river in this city anymore, which is a real pity. But imagine if we could bring back these three rivers, the Dakshin Pinakani, the Vrishabhavati and the Arkavati, what it would mean. But Mihir, I did want you to address the groundwater issues connected to this, because some of the research that A3 and others did show up that one of the reasons why the Arkavati is not flowing anymore, excuse me, is because change in rainfall, but upstream and in the catchment, but also because so much groundwater pumping is happening in such an unrestricted fashion that it is affecting the base flow of rivers. So understand this, because in India we have an untrammeled groundwater regime, our river flows are getting seriously affected because people are sucking groundwater from anywhere without any regulation. Do you want to talk about that and how?
I think I'll quickly explain that, depending on the time we have. See, it's very important to understand where does the water flow in our peninsular rivers come after the monsoon. See, after the monsoon is over, these rivers are what are called gaining rivers. They gain water from groundwater. It's the groundwater base flow which feeds these rivers. But what has happened over time, as we have extracted deeper and deeper for groundwater, the rivers have become losing rivers. The water, will keep its own level. So the water, instead of flowing from the ground into the river, is now flowing from the river into the ground. So rivers are the main reason. What Rohini is saying, the main reason for rivers drying up in India is over extraction of ground. And just to connect the Planning Commission point to what can happen in Bangalore, I think I have the fortune of actually currently being asked by the government of Karnataka to draft the Karnataka State Water Policy. And I'm here also for meetings in that connection. So one of the major things we are recommending in our policy is that we need this kind of people's movement around water.
Yes.
It cannot be done just by government alone, and especially when you take the work on lakes that has happened in
Yes.
Bangalore,
Yes.
the kind of work that will be required to manage groundwater. If the citizens don't understand what is the nature of the aquifer, as it's called, aquifer is the place where groundwater is stored below the ground. If we understand this, so what I am urging the government, there is what is called the Atal Bhujal Yojana,
Yes.
which the government of India, this is something I had initiated in the 12th five-year plan. It has come through now. 6,000 crores have been given by the World Bank, but it will remain only on paper.
Yeah, 3,000 from the World Bank and 3,000 from
So
coming from
the
India.
total 6,000 crores.
Yes.
The problem is if we don't involve people
Yeah.
in the management of groundwater, it cannot be done by the bureaucracy or hydrogeologists alone. And that becomes a major point of action for citizens to come together where they have rivers, lakes, and their groundwater. If we can disseminate this information to the primary stakeholders, the people who are actually using this groundwater, then they can possibly use it more sustainably. That will not only ensure sustainable water supply in the city without depending on expensive solutions like Kaveri, but also revive our rivers and lakes, which are, as you said, so dependent on this groundwater. So it's a complete relationship of interdependence between different forms of water and between nature and society. That interdependence has to be embodied in powerful partnerships for change. Without that, I think we will continue to make the mistakes and the paradigm shift will not come.
I think also we need to look at urban governance in India. If you're talking about cities and rivers, unfortunately, the model of urban governance that is right for this country has not yet emerged. I mean, even in a powerful place like Delhi, right, the Yamuna is nothing but a drain. I mean, it's the most polluted stretch of river you can imagine, and you would think with all the money being pumped in there, and the national capital should be setting an example of how you look after your own rivers flowing through your capital city, but unfortunately it's because we have not empowered our cities at all in terms of how they are run, who elects the mayors, how long the mayors are empowered to do their job, how they can raise financing to do intra-city projects, because that allows then citizens to be directly in connect with the responsive and accountable administration. And Bangalore is also very much suffering because we don't have the right governance institutions.
We
for urban
admire
management.
a lot of things about countries in
Yeah.
Europe, etc.
Yes.
We don't realize they have the most powerful Panchayati Raj in the world.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the mayors and the councils that are running those countries.
Yeah.
It's somehow something which we don't seem to absorb in our imagination.
Yes.
So we tend to copy a lot of stuff from there. I wish we would be copying this for a
Yes.
change.
Decentralized, accountable governments
And as
that
you
have the
said, with the
capacity to
revenue
raise
model,
capital,
Yeah.
to tax, to raise revenues.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So many of us take hope from what happened to the river Thames, right? In the 60s, it was a biologically dead river, and the city got its act together, and today they say that the river Thames in London is the cleanest river in Europe because they've done so much work. Today I just read there are 125 species of fish. River and biodiversity ecosystems are so linked. I want you all to imagine Bangalore with two rivers flowing from it, with clean, treated water feeding those rivers. I want you to imagine our lakes being revived because all of you did something to revive them. How many of you live near any lake? There you go. How many of you walk around your lakes? How many of you are interested in participating in restoring your lakes? There you go. So I think it's very important for us to be able to come together. And I think Bangalore is at a stage, of course, it's still growing. It's still growing like a teenager racing on some hormonal sort of kick. But I think it is stable enough in spite of that for us as citizens to be able to recover our water bodies and to start thinking of letting rivers cleanly flow to our cities. Can you imagine we could let through the whole heart of the city two rivers flowing, just looking like the European rivers, and still allowing the river to flow, to have good biodiversity, ecologically managed rivers, not just from an engineering perspective, being part of the economy and the culture of the city. What would Bangalore be? I think we should strive for that imagination.
I think, yeah, absolutely. And if there are questions, we could sort of.
We'll open it up. I just want to say one thing. I went to Uttarakhand with Ravi Chopra of People's Science Institute. We went through 16 river valleys and just before the massive floods that took place. And it was heartbreaking to see how the dams were built back to back and to serve cities far away, and of course to serve energy needs of cities far away. And how a river that was live and blue and so full of life became deader and deader and deader and deader until you reached Delhi when it was nothing more than a swamp.
Absolutely.
We cannot afford this. As Mihir said, the economy rests on the base of the ecology. And if we forget that connection, we are not going to be even able to have the sustainable growth that is going to still lift the remaining 300 million people out of poverty in this country. So I think even though it seems like such a distant thing, our cities, our rivers, and what we do to talk to each other, to create small citizens movements, to put pressure on our politicians. Without water, there is no life. Without water, your urban economy suffers. And we're already seeing that in parts of Bangalore where there is water scarcity. Some people think that the city will have to empty out if we don't manage our water properly, and it has happened in the past. We cannot afford that. So how all of you start thinking about re-engaging with Bangalore's water futures can make the difference between whether Bangalore is going to thrive or have to face serious crises. And this is the story of every city in the country which has a river or a drain flowing through it. So both of us feel very passionately about it, but maybe it's time to open it up we have less than 20 minutes. Ask us some hard questions. We'll try our best to answer. I think you need a mic though.
Yeah, I'm Madhavan. Rohini, I'm very keen to know, you mentioned Samaj and Bazaar, and I find that that has been the biggest nut to crack in this. The Samaj means participatory involvement of citizens,
Yes.
and Bazaar means actually financial and economic activities that are based on price signals.
Yes.
These two dots have not been connected in India substantially on issues. Do you have any ideas and views on how to connect the Samaj with the Bazaar? Because that's
Yeah.
where I think a huge amount of the challenge lies.
I don't know how in this particular instance connecting the Samaj and Bazaar, but I'll tell you in terms of the Bazaar has a lot of innovation, including technological innovations to offer the water sector, and I think we have not deployed enough of those. From the Samaj side, from civil society organization side, sometimes there has been a resistance to using technologies. But I think the time has come when we seriously can look at many new technologies which need the Bazaar's active involvement to put them out into the world at large with policy support from the state.
Rohini, the
Yeah.
other thing, more directly to what Madhavan is saying about pricing. So, I'll tell you all the water projects, hundreds of water projects that I've run in the last 30 years, the only ones which have really succeeded are ones which have been participatory, as you said, but where the people themselves, whether it's a drinking water project or an irrigation project, the people have agreed together with women in the leadership, by the way. That's very important, critical element of Samaj, which we sometimes ignore and is the most powerful agent of change. They have all agreed to pay for the water. They themselves, in a participatory, transparent manner, arrive at the tariff structure, and then because they are assured, because they own the system, they are running the system, the expenses of running the system are actually met by the price, or sometimes called the irrigation service fee. In those cases, it's the farmers who pay it, and it's the farmers who run the show. So I think Samaj and the economic element is already integrally, united, except when we try to impose this on people.
Yes.
When there is a threat, so-called of privatization of water,
Yes.
that is a non-starter.
Yeah.
What we need, okay, even if you bring in capital and you bring in a company, my formulation has always been, you build the capacities of the urban local body.
Yes.
You be there for a short period of time. You bring in your professional expertise, your technology, and you equip the urban local bodies. In Paris, it is remunicipalization of water.
Yeah.
There
They're
is a whole-
republicing their water.
It's all going back to the municipal control, because that kind of privatization is not going to work. But those principles, if exercised by the representatives of the people themselves in transparent and participatory manner, are really the recipe for.
Yeah. So So I think pricing is an important mechanism in water governance, but I think it matters how it is done, how participatory is and transparent is the process of making that pricing happen. And you need the states to have the capacity to create good contracts, which where the people who are awarded the contract, usually the private sector companies, have a mechanism of accountability to the larger public interest. And when that fails, I think the whole thing about pricing gets a bad name. But I don't think today anybody gets fully free water anymore. In some way or the other, we all pay, right? So I think doing the right form of pricing mechanisms has become very critical for the water sector.
Sir, good morning. I'm V. Shankaran, came from Hubli. I have a question to Dr. Mihir. So recently, government has announced the linking of.
See where the question is coming.
Right in front.
Sorry.
Right in
Okay,
front to the left.
Recently, government has announced linking of Godavari and Kaveri. This is your whatever your opinion, being a explaining commission member. Secondly, sir, why is not much attention given for the recycling of drainage water system, like infrastructure,
Desilting.
recycling of drainage. And third is, sir, why not much attention given for that preserving of rainwater? See, Bangalore is every year that rainfall is comfortably it is. But why instead of bringing water from Kaveri and other cells, why can't we sustain this, settle this, which rainfall itself, why can't we preserve?
So I'll actually answer your question from the reverse, because that's exactly the answer to your, what we are putting in the Karnataka water policy also, is that roof water harvesting in urban Karnataka, especially in Bangalore, is hardly, what it was meant to be.
Less than 50%.
Yeah, I mean, less than that even. I mean, obviously firm estimates don't exist. So what we are saying is, before you go in for expensive, ecologically more harmful, energy intensive solutions, which may or may not actually come about. Because when you try to interlink rivers, the first Ken-Betwa link, which has been in the pipeline for more than 15 years, is just not happening because the two states are not being able to agree. So I think these are very contentious issues. Instead of that, if we focus on local solutions, which are, for example, the revival of the lakes, roof water harvesting, managing your groundwater more sustainably, and using your wastewater more creatively. We didn't talk about that very much,
wastewater is
but
the key.
it is a huge resource. It's on the one hand a problem because water quality is becoming a very, very serious issue. I would say that we are just not understanding how serious an issue this has become.
Yeah.
And unless we're going to recycle water and make it, of the requisite quality, we are causing very great ecological damage. But if we do that, and by the way, again, the economics, Madhavan, on this, the rates of return, the payback period, as it's called, of these investments is very low. It's not more than 3 years in most cases. You can actually invest in this equipment and you can get the return. So instead of destroying the fresh water, which is anyway running out, we recycle water at very reasonable cost. People should be able to.
And of course, in a decentralized way, Mihir, because our city's imagination is to put treatment plants at the end of the city. Actually, they need to be throughout the city, so you're returning clean water into your stormwater drains.
If you will read our draft policy document,
which we look forward
this is
to.
exactly what we are saying. It should be decentralized wastewater treatment and using biological means, low cost.
Like we have in Jakkur, we have several examples
There
of
are
that.
so many examples we have cited in
Bioremediation, yes.
Exactly. So we have ways in which, because the world has moved on, and we can leapfrog into the 21st century, especially in the smaller towns which you have been working in.
Yes.
Instead of making the same mistakes, the outmoded 20th century paradigm, we can straight away leapfrog into the 21st century using these technologies. So, sometimes they call it reverse innovation or whatever.
Yes.
But it's about understanding the power of nature to fulfill the requirements of human society.
I think breaking down the pure engineering paradigm, understanding the power of decentralization, and keeping an interdisciplinary and ecology-based sort of and landscape-oriented design. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hi, morning. This is Ramesh Padmanabhan. See, we always have a focus internally on this country, whether it's our banking industry or anything. If we really look outside and see the example of Israel, it's very interesting how they went into recycling of water, and it has led to peace with Jordan, because Jordan, actually speaking, even though it's an Arab country, does not want to fight with Israel because River Jordan went dry and the water today is being replenished by the Israelis.
Yeah.
Israel has the highest rate of actually speaking, conserving, recycling water, etc. And water is treated as a national resource even if it falls on my backyard.
Yeah.
In the absence of these kind of things, we should also note one more thing. Israeli companies have supplied two big sites for desalination. Both Reliance and SR, which are in Gujarat, use their technology.
Yes.
California is now bound to accept the same technology. We, people who claim to be so-called entrepreneurial, are missing a big opportunity which is being capitalized and taken over. Israel is punching way above its power in the water recycling, water resources market.
Yes.
And we should also look at it that drip irrigation was also an offset of this project. And unless we plan this out and we keep growing sugarcane in Rajasthan, we have a problem. Serious problem which is not understood.
Very true.
And
80%
sugar
of our
surplus,
water
we are
goes
proud.
into
Please think
agriculture.
about it and respond. Do we need crops like sugar growing in the deserts of Rajasthan?
Well, Mihir feels very strongly about this.
So, I mean, I won't go to Rajasthan. Let's stick to Karnataka. Okay. And you take rice and sugarcane. Okay. So now I'm going to, you have a quiz later in the day. So let me ask you a quiz question. I'll ask about both Maharashtra and Karnataka actually. Maharashtra is even more striking. So let's begin with Maharashtra. It's a sugarcane state, etc. How much of the cropped area in Maharashtra is occupied by sugarcane? Okay, anyone? Sorry? Okay, that's a very informed guess because normally the answer. Oh my God!
That's summer
so
for you.
That obviously I should have known. So you should have been disqualified from answering the question. But I asked Jairam Ramesh in a meeting recently, and he said it's about 60%.
60.
Because the fact is actually it's only 4%. Maharashtra's sugarcane area is just 4%. But how much, and you are not going to answer that, how much of the water of irrigation does sugarcane take up in Maharashtra? It's 65%. So when the Chief Minister of Maharashtra asked me, what should I do to solve Maharashtra's water problem and he's facing drought after drought, I said just tweak, 4% to 2%, your entire water problem can be solved. And the same thing we are saying in Karnataka in our water policy document, that rice and sugarcane are, taking up nearly 3/4 of the state's water while they occupy just 20% of the cropped area.
Right.
What I'm recommending is that you move because, Karnataka has, after Rajasthan, the largest dry, rain-fed area in the country.
Yes.
And, all of northern Karnataka has traditionally grown millets and pulses.
Yes.
And if the government can decide to introduce these crops into the midday meal and the ICDS program, can you imagine the demand that it will
I think
create?
Karnataka is moving in that direction.
It is.
So I think Karnataka has done some fairly progressive work on millets
it's a
policy.
pilot, and what we are saying is scale up the pilot, and you will have a major impact on health because you know how diabetes has become a national epidemic. We are the fastest diabetes growing population in the world.
Yeah.
We have a multiple win-win. Farmer incomes because the cost of cultivation will come down, water security, ecology, and also consumer
Public health, yeah.
So by just making the shift, exactly as you said, away from sugarcane and crops like rice, I'm not saying get rid of them because then people raise this alarmist scenario.
No.
We are saying just reduce the percentage a little bit, bring it into the midday meal ICDS, bring it into the PDS.
And also grow it in a more water-wise way. But the simple thing someone told me is that farmers bulk up sugarcane with extra water just before it goes to market. If instead it was sold on sugar intensity, you would save a lot of water. So there are many tweaks you can do even in sugar and rice.
Absolutely.
How many of you have thought of eating millets of late? How many of you have increased millet intake? See, I think these are the changes that we're seeing happening, especially the young people in this room. Y'all can actually make public policy change much faster than if old people like Mihir and I sat on this platform giving lots of gyan.
Absolutely.
So the more you eat millets, the faster the sugarcane economy is going to shift.
The question I had was from a policy continuity perspective. How different, Dr. Shah, do you view the work that was done by the erstwhile Planning Commission replaced today by the Niti Aayog, and linked to that, and pardon me if this is political, do you view the project about cleaning the Ganga as purely a political project?
I didn't get
Yeah,
the
we
last
can't
one.
hear you. So, is the Ganga rejuvenation, Namami Gange? No, what did you say?
Two aspects to the question. The first was around policy continuity and how it's different, and the second, whether you view the Namami Gange project as purely a political project.
Okay.
Okay. No, I think, look, I was one of the critics of the way the Planning Commission functioned for all these years in this country. I think we cannot anymore have a command and control approach. Was not happy with chief ministers coming every year and presenting themselves to us, and like, a school child coming and presenting a report card. I think it was good to do away with that. But I think the Planning Commission was playing an increasingly important role in the economy, and I'd like to take 2 minutes over that. The essential role of the Planning Commission, in my view, is to be a reform commission. See, the implementation is done by the ministries and the state governments, but there has to be somebody, and the Planning Commission was a unique institution. It was both within government and outside government. It had people like me, largely who were from outside government. Most of the members were experts in their own fields, drawn from outside government, but embedded within government in a way that their voice carried weight and could push and facilitate reform where required. I would have state governments coming to me to help them resolve disputes among them. I would have people coming and asking, how can we implement this government program better? And the role of the Planning Commission was therefore like a knowledge commission, providing answers to difficult questions which the implementer was faced with. I think that role is important. That role, I don't know how much is being played by the current Niti Aayog, but we do need an institution like that, whatever name you give it. An institution like that has a crucial role in improving the quality of outcomes of the huge expenditure that government is now undertaking. We have to attend to the quality that we are achieving as a result of that expenditure. On Namami Gange, I don't think it's political at all, because from Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's time, the same program has been ongoing. The problem is that it's a resounding failure, whether it is one party or the other. So it's completely non-political, if you like, because it is universally, unfortunately, been a failure, because we continue to look at it from an engineering perspective. I would have thought that, when I met Ms. Uma Bharti, she was one of the great campaigners for saving the Ganga. So I appealed to that side of her. I said, look, you need a people's movement around the Ganga. Of course, the technology is important. Of course, all of this investment must go in, but it must become a people's movement. Without that, it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, that advice, of course, went unheeded, as it has gone for the last more than 30 years since the Ganga program has started. So I think the same point that we've been making since the morning, we need to view water in a multidisciplinary manner, in a cross-disciplinary manner, and with multiple stakeholders all coming together, sitting across the table with mutual respect for each other. I think that has not happened, and because of which programs like Namami Gange are not going to succeed.
Yeah, my name is Prima D'Souza. I'm a lecturer for BBA Department in St. Agnes College. My question is, in a cruise ship, we have water management as they have a separate machine where even the smallest waste goes into that machine and you have a rigorous filtration.
Wow.
So wastewater also gets converted into mineral water so that none of the wastewater is let into the oceans. Do we have such a technological development in India? And if not, so what is your opinion regarding adopting this type of technology?
I think the technology is
All
always
the technologies
there.
exist.
Technology is not the problem. The problem is exactly what we are saying. It's a paradigm shift in the way we think about solutions that we have to do. I mean, the cruise ship is a very nice metaphorical, situation that we are facing.
Loop. It's a closed loop.
Yeah, but in a way, we have to think that the situation is as critical as in that where they can't afford anything but what they are doing. Yeah. I think we should also feel that
circular economy in water.
Without
we obviously need to head towards that. Yeah. The technologies exist. How is the governance structure going to allow for those technologies to be used properly? I think that's where we are all failing. Yeah. So I want to leave you all again with the imagination of a Bangalore with 2 rivers flowing, with brimming clean lakes, and all of you participating in activities around that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rohini.